Are you thinking about moving to the Portland metro area and you're making comparisons between living in Texas versus moving to Portland? In today's video, we are going to be covering a comparative analysis of maybe two of the most important cities in Texas to kind of compare to, Dallas and Austin, and we are getting after it right now.
If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in the greater Portland metro area, then make sure you click that subscribe button, tap the notification bell, do a happy dance, and you will be the first to know about everything up here in our market.
I'm Ann Stewart. This is Erica Hagfirst. We are your go-to gals when you're making that move to the Portland metro area. And as Erica said, if you want all of our content on a weekly, we put it out on the weekly. And all of our information is in the description below, so hit us up, let's connect, and help you make a smooth transition to Portland. All right, so you're thinking about the two entirely different states, Oregon versus Texas, primarily Portland versus, we're gonna go with Austin and Dallas. That's the data we have been looking at. And a lot of our clients that make it the move, they move from Texas because there is a big difference and a lot of similarities. And we're going to get into why those differences are in this video. So let's get after it.
Okay, and when it comes to cost of living, which is obviously a big factor for a lot of people when it comes to choosing where they're going to live, what are the three main factors that we need to look at?
Well, the things that you should look at is property taxes, income taxes, and sales tax. Those play a big factor. In fact, even homeowners insurance is now coming into play.
Yeah.
So the first thing we should probably talk about is the state income tax. In Texas, if you're from there, you know you don't pay any. But when you move to the Oregon, Portland area, you're going to pay income tax in upwards of 8.75%. This is obviously based on your income level, as it has kind of a graduated percentage.
I mean, the cool thing though is that we don't generally pay sales tax.
We don't.
I mean, that's a big win.
Yep.
For us, they do have a cat tax on certain goods, but for the most part, we don't pay sales tax at all.
Yeah. So you can kind of balance the scales a little bit there. The other thing you should be aware of is that property taxes in Texas are much higher. So when you're kind of looking at the scales of like cost of living, you can kind of start to see like, okay, you're going to pay in upwards of 8 to 9% income tax, depending on your income level, but your property taxes are going to jump considerably. And in my research online, it looks like you're going to pay about $1,000 to $1,500 more in property taxes for the same house in Texas as you would up here in Portland. I've heard in some cases it's double than that. So you might be looking at a lot higher property taxes in Texas versus Oregon. Ours are not cheap by any means, but when I compare them to people who live on the East Coast or Texas, I always find like, wow, you guys are almost double what we typically pay.
Yeah. I mean, obviously there's pockets throughout the Portland metro that are pretty wild.
Yeah.
Based off the homes that they're attached to, and even pockets within the Portland metro that are high in general for what you're getting. So that's definitely something to check out regardless, it sounds like, of where you're at, whether you're in Texas, because they're going to have just as high. But here too, occasionally you'll find a zinger that kind of stands out.
Usually Multnomah County, so our main county within the Portland city limits is Multnomah County. They're known for higher property taxes. In fact, a lot of people choose to move out of Multnomah County into the Washington, Clackamas counties that are just nearby, still within the Portland metro area, because they get a better deal on their property taxes. But coming from Texas, you might find Multnomah taxes aren't that bad.
Maybe they'll be okay
So
for you.
like Erica said, there are pocket areas that are pretty extreme in their taxes and others that are pretty tame or comparable to their Washington County or Clackamas County counterparts. But in general, we're going to go ahead and say that Texas has higher property taxes. So one other thing that we have to talk about as far as cost of living that's pretty important that we touched on was property insurance, right?
Yeah.
Because
you got to have it.
You got to have it. And as we've talked in other videos about, the trouble with a lot of states in the union starting to have a difficulty in either getting it or seeing that it is very, very expensive. So Erica, what did you discover when you looked online?
Yeah, so according to insurance.com, Texas is the 5th highest state to insure your property in. And the average cost for homes in Texas, $4,100 plus a year.
Wow.
And that's insane.
Yeah.
I mean, that's really, really high. We'll talk about Oregon here or Portland in just a moment, but That's ridiculously high. Now, they do have some more natural disaster type things that we don't have up here. And that is one of those factors that's going to increase the rate at which you pay, because obviously if you have things like massive hailstorms that are causing dents, you're going to have a lot of claims. And that is going to, obviously that's auto insurance, but it can also do damage to your home.
Yep.
And it just is one of those things that you have to take into account when you are looking at where you want to live. People who in California think about that sometimes too. Obviously, they have a hard time even just getting insurance. But you're going to pay premiums in some of these areas that have issues with the weather. And what did you find for the Portland metro area? What's the average?
I double checked our numbers because we obviously deal in real estate here, so we hear about what it is. But the average in Oregon here in Portland is $1,255 a year. And we had somebody reach out to us from Texas recently that asked about this, and they were alarmed to see how cheap it was because it's a big reasoning why they're moving up here is the cost. So when we talk about all these cost of living factors, higher property taxes in Texas, higher homeowners insurance in Texas. Yes, you're paying, and no sales tax here, but you're paying on average a higher income tax. So when you start to weigh all this stuff out, maybe you look at your income and say, okay, what does my income tax, liability look like based on what you're going to be paying more to stay in Texas than live there? I don't know. I think it would be interesting to do an analysis. Like, obviously we can't do one because everybody's circumstances, incomes, property types are different, but I would venture to say that this is going to be like one of those weighing things where in some cases it's much more expensive to live in Texas versus Oregon. But let's talk about housing prices next.
Ooh.
Okay.
We're both excited about this one.
All right. So housing prices obviously are going to be very different in Texas versus Oregon, but also in the cities. So we did some research on this a little bit we kind of pulled from Dallas and Austin. We'll start with Dallas first. It seems that Dallas, Texas, your average sales price is in the mid 400 range for a single family home, which sounds very affordable to us because it's very difficult for us here in Portland to find a home, single family for the mid 400s.
When you come saying you want a nice house for $400,000, it's a challenge.
It's a challenge. You're really looking at townhomes and condos, right?
You really are. I mean, if you want anything that's livable, there's just not, or you are happy to be way outside the city.
Yeah.
But if you want something close into the city and you want it to be a single family home that's detached, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
It's going to be real minimal. You might be getting like less than 1,000 square feet. And it's conditionally not going to be amazing. But going down to Texas, and I've had clients who have sold up here and moved to Texas, and man, what they're getting down there is nice.
Yeah, we actually just had some clients that had to move down to Texas for work. They got relocated for their company, and they were able to buy a lot more house for the money. They sold their house up here for quite a bit, and they were able to buy substantially less in price, but get more house. Yeah. So that is the difference. Now, they were also in the Dallas area, which is a very big metropolis. It's much bigger than Portland, and there's a lot more housing options, probably why there's more, affordability. But up here in Portland, you're going to pay on average about $550,000 for a single family home on average, but they go up from there.
Yeah.
And in most cases, people are buying in the 600s and 700s to get in the locations that they've heard about or want to be in.
Yeah.
So just be aware that while our medium sales price is right around that 550, that we tend to find that the average person looking is more in the 6s and 7s, just based on desirability of, a house. Now, Austin's a little different. So in looking at the research on Austin, talking to some of our colleague realtors down there, Austin's going through a bit of a softening as we do this video right now, and their prices, they were just soaring sky high during the pandemic. Everybody was moving to Austin, Texas. And Austin is a liberal city, similar to Portland.
It's a very different city in comparison to the rest of Texas, which can make it a little bit of a mecca for people who want to move there, not necessarily for political reasons, but they want to feel comfortable. So it makes sense. They've probably got some money coming into that area from California.
That's right.
When people were moving out during the pandemic. It has always been a little bit more of an artsy city. I mean, wasn't Whole Foods born there?
Yeah, I think so.
So, very trendy with the music industry as well. And so you've always found it to be a little bit more fashionable. It doesn't have as much sprawl as Dallas or Fort Worth or some of these other cities. So it takes into account that you're going to have a little bit higher prices.
Yeah.
Technically, I think you said they're actually even supposedly higher than Portland.
It's almost neck and neck. Just in researching this morning, it was about $565,000 for the average sales price in Austin. Now, that's not very much difference than Portland. And of course, if you look at Portland as a whole, we're a lot smaller. We have a lot less inventory. Whereas, Austin has a lot of inventory right now sitting on the market. So
Yeah.
I think in general, like we could make an argument with the data to look at it from the perspective of that we're more expensive because we have less inventory. We don't have the urban sprawl. I think Eric and I can both agree on that because I
Yeah.
think we get a lot of people who are kind of amazed at our sales prices, really.
And that's something to touch on here is that we have an urban growth boundary.
Yes.
So it prevents the sprawl that you see in places like Texas or Arizona or some of these places where they can just build these developments that go on for acres and, you know, it's just flat buildable land and
Yep.
and that's all they're doing. So not only is our land not super conducive to that, but we do not want that in our area.
Yeah.
And that though then drives up, it prevents, you know, it limits the amount of
Housing
land that
crashes.
we have to
Yeah.
to build on, which then makes it a little bit more valuable.
Yeah,
So,
I mean, that's a huge point. We've done a video on the urban growth boundary talking about the fact that it preserves our values. You know, when we hit, there's only really been over the last 20 years, a pretty substantial dip in home values in the Portland metro area. And that was in the era where everybody in the United States got hit, which is 2008 through 2012, that fun little recession that nobody likes to talk about or remember. But we really did have a dip at that time. But other than that, Portland has seen nothing but go up. But in this market that we're experiencing now, where we're kind of seeing a softening a little bit, other parts of the country like Texas, where they just built and built as far as the eye could see, now they're starting to experience some price declines that are pretty substantial. So I think all in all, when it comes to Portland and preserving values, we're not going to see Portland take a massive dip. We're going maybe we see softening from time to time based on what interest rates are doing or what the economy is doing, but we never see it just go flying backwards. So we're a little more safer, in my opinion, as an investment.
all right, and what are the big industries here in Portland? What's drawing people here? Why do people want to come be here?
Well, we do have a ton of technology companies. We're called the Silicon Forest because of the amount of technology companies we have, the biggest employer being Intel. And then we also have Nike. And we actually have a lot of headquarters for athletic companies here.
Columbia and Adidas?
Yep, and Armor. And so, you know, and then there's a lot of different other types of companies. And for Portland not being a very big city compared to like Dallas or even Austin, it has, you know, a pretty, you know, it has a lot of companies in a very small area. Whereas Dallas has a ton of Fortune 500 companies. They've got telecommunications, they've got healthcare, they even have tech. Austin has big tech. You probably heard Elon Musk moved a lot of his manufacturing out there and so forth. So they're both cities have a lot of, you know, companies that draw people in to move there. That's why we actually get a lot of relocation back and forth. In fact, when I bought my house, the gentleman who was selling, he moved down to Texas because he was getting relocated for work. So that happens a lot. That's why Texas is such what we call a feeder state. A lot of people move back and forth for jobs, going to and fro.
Very business friendly in Texas. They've got obviously a lot of land to sprawl, and they want to bring people in to use that. So I would say very business friendly there.
Okay, the next thing we want to talk about as far as the comparison is a big one, and it's geography. So I've been to Texas multiple times. Obviously, I grew up and lived in Portland. We can tell you, we think Portland wins.
I've driven through Texas, and let me tell you, there was not, this is not big on Texas, but there was not a lot to remember, and it was very, very flat.
Yeah, very flat.
So I think, you know, we win in the sense that we have the mountains, we have the beach, we have valleys, we've got it
Hills,
all.
mountains, lush green.
Exactly. If you want lush green, you can be on this side, you can be in central, in the high desert. I mean, you can get whatever you want within just, you know,
Okay, comment below if you think Portland wins. Let's just say Portland wins. It's just, even if you haven't been here, just Google the images. You'll see really quickly.
And to go along with that, climate is something else that you can add into it. And the climate really here is, I mean, even though we've gotten a little bit warmer during the summer, I still would say we have 4 seasons. We have a summer, we have a fall, which is the perfect, best time of year here. We have winter and we have spring. You know, so if you are somebody who is looking for a little bit of change throughout the year, we are definitely the winner. You know, I was just talking to some clients who will be moving up here, and they were telling me that in November it was still 80 plus degrees, and they were like not loving it. So
we have a lot of colleagues down in Texas, and one of the things they talk about is how absolutely roasting hot it gets during the summer, to the point where it's, you know, almost unbearable. So while we have also gotten hotter summers, we're still pretty pretty average around 75 degrees during the summertime. But yeah, I think, you know, as far as like seasonality goes, we actually joke in Portland that we have 11 seasons because we have, you know, many different varieties of spring and winter and all that stuff.
Spring through 10th.
You get all the different types of weather patterns, but that's what makes it so lush and so green. You know, people make fun of us because of our heavy rain and our drizzle. But
awesome.
Actually, the average rainfall in Texas, in many cases, is not too different. It's not too far off from Portland. The difference is we just drizzle. Yeah. You know, we go through the entire winter, fall, spring, and we drizzle. So it feels like more rain, but you guys get it in Texas much more hard, intense when it happens. And so I think that's why, you know, we get a little bit more, you know, people think we have more wet. But in truth, we have some really beautiful seasons that, you know, really are stunning.
Spectacular.
Yeah. All right. The last thing we're going to talk about for Portland versus Texas, and again, we're comparing Dallas and Austin, is our politics.
Ooh, touchy subject.
It is a touchy subject. You know, Texas is typically looked at as a red state, although the major metropolitan cities like Dallas and Austin have been known to vote primarily or more Democratic. We actually look at Austin as our sister city here in Portland. We talk about it all the time. Like if you're going to move to Texas and you want to be in a Portland-esque city, Austin is the ticket because it's very Democratic, very liberal, very artsy, very much like Portland in a lot of ways.
And obviously here in Portland, we're very blue. It is like Democratic very much all the way. I will say in the Portland metro, if you are out in outlying areas, east side of Oregon, which I know is not Portland, but you know, there are areas outside. But if you are in Portland, it is a very blue. And that is just the way it goes here.
We're kind of in follow, you know, we follow the West Coast, you know, Washington, Oregon, California, all Democratic. Texas, obviously, you know, is primarily red, but you guys have, or in Texas, they have a lot of Democrats, blue in the major cities. But you're probably going to feel like it's a lot more liberal if you come to Portland. I think a lot of people misunderstand how liberal and progressive Portland is. And so if you're conservative or you have, you know, very conservative values, you may find it a challenge to be here. But down in Texas, it might be a little bit more of, you know, balance, I would think. But hey, drop a comment below if you think differently.
Let us know.
But definitely, if you're looking for liberal and you're comfortable in a Democratic
Portland's
state,
the place to be.
You can't, you know, this is it. All right, thanks for joining us as we talked about Texas versus Portland. Who do you think won? Is there actually a winner? I don't know. Drop your comments below. We always like to hear from you guys. But if you are in Texas and you're thinking about making a move to Portland and you want to discuss, you know, making that move, all of our contact information is listed below. Reach out to us. We love getting the calls, emails, and texts. And we'll see you guys on the next video. Bye.
Bye, guys.